You're the first African-American, first black actor to play Jim Gordon in any Batman movie, and you're in the Batman, and are you in the Batman 2?
That's the plan. Haven't
All
read the
right.
script yet, but that's
But
the
you're
plan.
going to reprise it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But here's the thing about, people like, the first black, after like the first black president of the United States, I kind of pull back from like the first black thing. After
I know,
that,
they
like,
always
everything else,
say
like,
it.
Wait a minute. Why are these books here?
I'm not sure. I would imagine that this author, Ellison, is black.
That's me, Ellison. Yeah. He is me, and he and I are black.
Oh, bingo.
No bingo, Ned. These books have nothing to do with African American studies. They're just literature. The blackest thing about this one is the ink.
I don't decide what sections the books go in, and no one here does. That's how chain stores work.
Right. Ned, you don't make the rules.
I'm just gonna put them back after you leave.
Don't you dare, Ned. Do not you dare.
Welcome to the actor's side. Today, well, he's an Emmy, Tony, and Golden Globe winner for Angels in America, which I really want to talk about. And now he has his first Oscar nomination as Best Actor in a leading role for American fiction. It is so well-deserved. The only thing is I'm stunned at your first Oscar nomination. I would have assumed you would have been nominated several times for so many things you've done. This is Jeffrey Wright. Welcome.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Are you as stunned as I am that it took this long to get an Oscar nomination?
I don't know if I'm stunned. I feel really grateful. There are a lot of different ingredients that have to come together for a moment like this to happen.
Yeah.
The quality of the work has to be there, of course, but you also need the support from your backers, from the studio. In this case, Orion, Amazon, MGM, who have been incredibly energetic and intentional in getting our film out there.
Right.
Didn't hurt that we won the Toronto Film Festival
That
Choice
was
Award,
key.
but they had they had an idea that we might when the film went there. So from that point, they have just invested time and resources behind us, so that the film would find an audience, but also that it would be seen by those who matter when it comes to recognition like this. So this is the first time in my career that I've had that level of support.
Yeah.
That's been the difference here.
Yeah.
I've never before. I've had projects that I was involved with in which there was talk of the buzzy stuff and all that, but I have never before had this level of investment really in the potential of my work. So
Which is so great too, because it's a leading role.
yeah.
And so often you're part of brilliant ensembles and great supporting roles that you've won awards for and things like that. But of course, Basquiat, earlier on in the career, was an amazing performance in. I would have thought that would have brought an Oscar nomination because that was phenomenal.
Thank you. That film was pulled from the theaters.
Ah,
It was doing very well. It was pulled after a few weeks from the theaters.
really?
Yeah. So as far as any kind of support for recognition from the Academy, there was none.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Yeah, I guess, who released that?
That was Miramax.
Miramax, okay.
Yeah. And, for whatever reason, I think there were some internal disagreements,
Yeah.
and there was nothing done.
Frustrating.
So at the end of the day, it is what it is. Yeah. It does, to an extent, have an effect on the trajectory of one's work, one's career potentially. But at the same time, what I'm really incredibly appreciative of in my career is that there has always been, on the creative side, interest in my work.
Always, yeah.
From early on, people like Sidney Lumet, who took an interest in me, gave me a job in a film called Alan Pakula.
Yeah.
Now
Mike Nichols.
Mike Nichols,
I mean,
George C. Wolfe, of course, being
Yeah.
at the top of that list. Lately, I've developed this really wonderful relationship with Wes Anderson and
Yeah.
had an incredible relationship with Jonah Nolan and Lisa Joy doing Westworld. And I've found a wonderful group of collaborators and artists who say, there's something there that I want to work with, and that's made the difference for me as well. And one thing that I've always been kind of cautious of, just generally, is who I owe anything to. So I don't mind being indebted to the group of artists who have been supportive of me over the time. And as far as the kind of other side, the business side of what we do, well, we're here now, and I'm really very pleased.
it is. You mentioned George C. Wolfe, who is actually here. He's such a lovely man and such a talent, amazing person between Broadway and plays, theater and movies and television, everything that he's done.
Yeah.
But you're in Rustin
Yes.
this year too,
Yes.
playing Adam Clayton Powell.
Yes.
Who I remember well at the time. Adam Clayton Powell was quite a character.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
And you are nominated in the same category as Coleman Domingo from that movie, which is amazing. I mean, there was that period where they said Oscars so white. This year we have a really diverse list of nominees and several categories.
Well, I think there's been some really wonderful work
Yeah.
from those nominees. There's Coleman is just, he was so committed to that performance and to, the message behind that film. And likewise, I was as well. George Wolfe is obviously a longtime collaborator of mine. He's even a mentor to me. I think he is he's absolutely singular. George has, for the longest time, been committed to telling stories, particularly from a historical perspective, about crucial moments and crucial individuals in American history, who, in this case, with Rustin, are responsible for many of the freedoms that we enjoy today. One of George's sayings is respect the source.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot when we work, and so, yeah, the opportunity to be a part of that film was one that I accepted, but I didn't accept immediately because my schedule was so crazy at the time. I was doing Westworld. I had gone away to do Asteroid City. I wasn't sure if they would let me off to do the role of Adam Clayton Powell. But my mom passed a few years ago. I've been dealing with her affairs since, as one does. And I was down at her house in Washington, and George was saying, "Jeffrey, are you going to do the movie?" I said, "George, I'm trying to make it work." When I go down there, there was some work that needed to be done down in the basement of the house. A relative of mine had pulled up all of this stuff that was my mom's. She had a wonderful collection of books and records and things, and there was a lot of stuff that he had placed in the living room so that the work could be done. So I walk into the house. I open the door. I walk in, and I look in the living room, and the first thing that I see is Adam Clayton Powell, his face staring at me, his finger pointing at me like this, on the cover of an album that was a collection of his speeches called "Keep the Faith, Baby."
Oh, right. Yes.
And I called George. I said, "George, you're never going to believe what just happened." He said, "Yes, Jeffrey, that's your mother telling you to do my movie." So I said, "Okay, I guess I'm in." So we figured it out.
That was
I'm so glad I was there. I mean, Powell had such a presence in my house. I was aware of him from the earliest, having grown up in Washington. My mom was a lawyer, very political house. And he's bit political showman, part political shaman. But he was the first Black elected congressman from the North, elected in 1941 and, served until the early 70s. He was a character. If you want to, have a little fun, go listen to some of the recordings from the Oval Office of phone conversations between him and Lyndon Johnson.
Oh, my God.
Oh, just wonderful stuff. But, yeah, good fun to play. something of a villain in this film, but good fun to play.
I'm so glad your mother sent you that message.
Yeah.
And beyond.
Yeah.
That because we would have missed that probably.
Yeah.
And that movie, as you mentioned, has an important message behind it. So does American Fiction. I think in this time, and it's a brilliantly funny satire. Like the best satires always have something to say too in their own way.
Mel Brooks was at an event the other day, and he talked about satire, and there was a montage of interviews with him. He said, satire is pointless if it's not about the times. If
Right.
it's not speaking to the politics of the day, if it's not speaking to social issues, it's pointless.
That's it, and he did it in his own way with so many things. Of The Producers is one example of that. And this one too, with everything going on in the world, critical race theory, these books being banned. There's a great short nominated for an Academy Award in the documentary shorts called The ABCs of Book Burning. And
I'll have to watch it when I...
astounding when you look at this little movie about all these books that have been banned in schools that are classics. And it's a scary time, and this movie is also about, literature and you make a lot of points about that and what people accept and what they expect and all kinds of things like that.
Well, we're a small movie as well, shot for significantly less than $10 million and shot in 26 days. Small movie, but packed with big ideas,
Yes.
I think, and a story for the times. And I think that's why it's caught the interest of audiences as well. We do it with a bit of fun,
a lot of fun.
We don't take ourselves too seriously, and we allow space within the film to take on these conversations around race, this scary, subject, and identity and inclusion, and do it in a way that's welcoming and palatable. These are conversations that are central right now in America. The first scene of the movie takes place in a classroom. It's a conversation around context and history and language of race. That conversation is happening in classrooms all over America right now. I read an article the other day that I had missed about a teacher up at the University of Michigan who was asked to remove himself from teaching a course on adapting classical literature into opera because he had the apparently poor judgment to screen Laurence Olivier's Othello for his class. And of course, Olivier plays in
1965 version
in blackface. And the students revolted against this, which I find strange because that's the history. It's not to be afraid of.
Right.
It's to be confronted
Yeah.
so as to be understood and not repeated. It's to be learned from. But that is the identical, really, dynamic that exists in the first scene of our film. So this is a conversation that we're all having. We don't necessarily have it well. Obviously, in the film, it's not a good conversation. but Cord has a fluency.
Cord Jefferson,
writer-director, who adapted this from Percival Everett's novel Erasure. Like Percival, has a fluency in this subject and these themes. And so we're trying, I think, to elevate the conversation a little bit, not trying to answer questions, but say, hey, nothing to be afraid of here. Let's just gather. Let's just talk about it and see if we can talk about it in better ways so that maybe we can, make a little progress. Because the conversation that's being had now around these issues on one side is a conversation around race so that we can make it disappear.
Right.
We can make the history disappear. They're not talking about it so that we can improve efforts around inclusion and creating a more just society. They're talking about it because they want to destroy it. Yeah. On the other side, we're talking about it because we want to respond to these injustices, but we don't always do it well. We don't always do it in ways that are as progressive as we might think. Sometimes it's a little bit superficial. And then there's another element of, the country that talks about it and is traumatized by it. And so we come together and we kind of fail. Well, in the film, we we do pretty well with it.
Oh, isn't that the great thing?
And I
about,
think it's comforting for
it's
audiences.
very comforting. It's a great thing about movies.
Yeah.
Is that you can do that, and it's also so much fun to watch. My favorite scene is still in the bookstore,
Yeah.
where you're talking to that poor clerk
Oh,
who
God.
just is like clueless.
Ryan Doyle, I believe that.
He was great.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Just his
Oh
expressions.
God! When I walked onto set and I said, "Okay, where's Ned?" And I saw him and I said, "Yes, that is Ned." I mean, and the casting in this was just so delicious.
Oh, right down the line. Of course, Sterling K. Brown is nominated for an
Yes,
Oscar in
yes.
supporting. He's wonderful in this.
Fantastic.
But everybody, Leslie Uggams,
Leslie
to see
Uggams.
her
Leslie
again,
Uggams.
and but you can go down the line of this fantastic ensemble.
But Leslie Uggams is one, we talked about Rustin a little bit, which is about the architecture of the March on Washington. Leslie Uggams is one of those artists who marched on the figurative Washington that is our industry. She marched on New York and Los Angeles.
Right.
In terms of the work that they did to bridge the gap from the early days of cinema that were incredibly limiting for an artist like myself. When you look back at Burke Williams and you sweep forward, but over time there were generations of people who, through the power of their talent and through supreme grace and dignity with the way they worked, made it possible for artists like myself and Sterling and Tracy Ellis Ross and Issa Rae to do the work that we're able to do today. Leslie Uggams is representative of that group, so it was just such an honor.
Amazing to
work
have
with
her in there.
And I always
80 years old.
80 years old, still going strong, still doing it,
She's
still
great.
loving it,
Yeah.
and still,
Which is great.
still a crush of mine. As I
So
say.
yeah, well, I remember when she won a Tony Award too, like you did. She won for a Hallelujah Baby. I remember all those decades ago. I wanted to ask you about Angels in America,
Sure.
and doing that, because it's an extraordinary achievement. First of all, to win an Emmy, a Tony, and a Golden Globe for playing the same character.
Well, if they're handing them out,
And you'll take 'em
why
out.
not?
You sort of ran the table.
Yeah.
And it was a great role. This nurse that had to deal with Roy Cohn, who I find to be a despicable character, Roy Cohn. He's created Donald Trump and all kinds of terrible things in this country in terms of, never just dig in, just lie, just do what you want.
Incredibly cynical.
But there it was, so well played and so interesting when he's dying, and your character in that, incredible. There's no question why you won so many awards and acclaim for it.
Yeah, that was a reckoning for old Roy. That's really in some ways the kind of epicenter of my career. It was early on, but it was just a magical time when we did it on Broadway, and then of course later during the film, but particularly when we did it on Broadway, it was just like there were moments when I was on stage when I got off and I thought to myself, there's no other place in the world right now that I am to be.
Wow.
And I think, what a gift for anyone, and I hope we all find those moments in our life, but it was clear that we were doing something that was purposeful. There were times you'd look out in the audience and you'd see people who were clearly sick with the disease, and there was an opportunity for an invocation of life, as the play concludes with. There was an opportunity for validation. There was an opportunity to explore, the roots of this tragedy, and it was just so fulfilling. I remember one day we did a show. It was a benefit show. The audience was entirely male, all gay men. That was a masculine audience, and the vibe coming from that audience for the entire 7 hours of that play was like solar energy. It was so powerful. We came out for the curtain call, and it was you could feel wind from the audience. It was like this explosion of appreciation. I looked around, I said, "Are the Beatles here? I mean, what just happened?"
Wow.
It was really magical, and it was personal, for all of us. For me, the first play that I ever did in college was a student production that had been cobbled together by a guy who was a year behind me, a guy named Kevin Frazier. He passed away of age shortly after graduating from Amherst. First role I ever got when I got my equity card was a Lorraine Hansberry play called Le Blanc, which I did down at Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. the year or so after I graduated from school. The part had been written for Hal Scott, who was the director. He was head of Rutgers theater program. He cast me. Hal passed away of AIDS. When I moved to New York, I went to NYU for a bit. I left to do that play again in Boston. I came back to New York. My first audition was for a play at Yale Rep, Playboy of the West Indies. I got the role. Dennis Scott, who was a professor up at Yale, cast me in that. He passed away of AIDS. At my time at NYU, there was a teacher named Paul Walker who I absolutely adored. He taught improv and games. He was like a walking poem. Last time I saw him was at St. Vincent's Hospital. He was unrecognizable. He passed of AIDS. All of these people who were so meaningful to me very early on in my career. And so, yeah, there were personal aspects of that.
Oh my God! And you take that and into that role, and how long did you play that?
I was for a year and a half.
A year and a half.
Yeah,
that's intense.
Yeah, it was. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's long. You got another Tony nomination for Top Dog, Underdog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you like doing theater as opposed to film? You do so much film.
I love telling a good story.
Yeah.
You know, a theater has some advantages over film. You have an immediate relationship with the audience. You are the editor. Ultimately, you kind of take over the directorial responsibilities because you're on stage and you have to manage that, as a proxy for the director. But that immediacy with the audience is something that I really value. When I was doing Top Dog, actually on Broadway, I was filming Angels in America during the morning. So I'd get up, and my son, I think, was about, 2 years old. I wasn't really sleeping that consistently. I would go to Kaufman Astoria out in Queens. I would film Angels, not every day, but many days, with Al Pacino, and Al dies with vigor, So we'd be in there wrestling together, and then they're like, "Okay, it's 6 o'clock, Jeffrey. You got to go." And I'd head off to Manhattan to do the play. And there were some nights where I just wow. There were literally some nights on stage where I said, "Oh man, I think I'm about to fall over," but we got through it. But there was one day. There's a scene, the heaven scene, where Belize describes heaven.
Right, yeah.
To Roy Cohn. And that piece had been added when we did the Broadway production. Tony came in to rehearsals one day, and he said, "I wrote something new for you." And he showed me that piece, and I went, wow. It was literally like a dream, because I'd had an idea. I had ideas about how Belize might express something akin to what was in that monologue, that he needed something, and it was a literal dream, and he handed that to me, and I was like, wow.
Whoa.
Just one of the most beautiful pieces of like kind of dramatic poetry that I had read. So I said, okay, boom. So anyway, of course, having done the play for a year and a half, I had a good deal of rehearsal by the time it came to do the film. But one day we shot Al's side of the scene first, and Mike said, "Okay, it's 5:30, Jeffrey, or 5:15 or something like that. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Let you get off to the theater." I said, "No, let's do it now. Since we're here, we're in the vibe. Let's just do it." And he said, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, it's not going to take long." So they turned the camera around very quickly, and I did that in 2 takes. And went to the theater.
Did the show.
Went did Top Dog.
The life of an actor.
But it was only because I had a lot of rehearsal.
But still, that's intense.
And it's actually it's one of my favorite scenes that I've ever done on film, and it's partly because I had an opportunity to kind of pull back from the largeness of the theater performance and really distill down the essence of the language and of the intention there. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Before we go, I have to ask you, because you're in all these things that everybody's seen that are blockbusters. James Bond, 3 movies,
Yeah.
with Daniel Craig, the last one, No Time to Die. What is going to happen with that series now? I mean, they killed off James Bond.
Yeah. Well, pretty good run though.
It was a very good run. So you did 3 of those. Hunger Games. Jim Gordon, you're the first African-American, first black actor to play Jim Gordon in any Batman.
But here's the thing about Jim Gordon, that Jim Gordon's character appears in the first frame of the comic book in 1939. It's him and Bruce Wayne. 1939.
It's iconic.
New York City was 95% white in 1939.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? That's that's the city that Gotham is based on.
Right.
So Bob Crane, Bill Finger, they were living up in the Bronx and writing about writing this kind of fantasy based on Gotham. And so sweep forward to today, it's a very different Gotham.
Well, that's for sure.
And
it's interesting.
To expect that you would make a film about a modern American city,
yes,
and that it would be populated by the same faces that populated a city like that in 1939, makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
It's just the natural order of things now.
It is.
It's just the way things progress. And so,
which is good.
It is what it is.
It's
neither good nor bad. It just is. Yeah.
Well, I think Matt Reeves is a great director.
He's a wonderful director.
Yeah.
Wonderful
he
director.
Did those Planet of the Apes movies. They have another new one coming out, but I thought they should have stopped with the last one because I don't know how you top it.
Yeah, I can't. I can't wait to jump back into this with Matt. He, like me, has an appreciation for those kind of gritty noir American films of the 70s.
That's what was so great about it.
Yeah.
It was like a noir.
When I read the script, I was like, yes, there's an accessibility to this world and a groundedness to it that I really, really appreciated. And it harkened back to that era of filmmaking, which is the golden age. So yeah, great choices by him. Can't wait to return to Gotham.
Very cool. Well, best of luck at the Oscars and with American Fiction, which is doing very well at the box office. It continues to find an audience out there, which is really good because original filmmaking like that is needed. And and the support, as you say, you've gotten from MGM and Orion is heartening to me. People are seeing it in theaters, and you should see a movie like that in the theater because it's an experience. That's why it won the Audience Award.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright, thank you for joining us on The Actor's Side.
Thank you, Pete. Really, really appreciate you having me.